What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with my ACC conference predictions. Before I get into it, we're going to talk about the new state of the ACC, Cal and Stanford joining, and SMU, because, well, these teams needed something to do after their conference either disbanded with Cal and Stanford, and SMU looking to move up in the ranks coming from the American Conference. But we'll start it with the worst team I have projected this year. It's going to be Virginia. They're going to go 2-10 with their week 1 win against Richmond and a week 6 win against Boston College at home. And I think the game after Boston College, I don't like any of those games that they have left on their schedule except the one at the end of the year against Virginia Tech. I have Louisville, Clemson, UNC. That's a tough 3-game stretch after that win at Boston College. Then you get a bye. Then you go on the road at Pitt, at Notre Dame, home against SMU, and then on the road against your rival at Virginia Tech. I just think it's going to be tough sledding here for Virginia this year. 3-9, I have Georgia Tech, and I think this team could go either way. I think this team could finish 6-6 or 3-9. I have them at 3-9 just because their schedule early on is tough, and I think those few losses they're going to take will factor into this year's success. I think they're going to lose week 1 to Florida State, which you'll see in Ireland, and then they win against Georgia State, VMI, and they beat Duke at home. They have Duke's number these last few years, but after that, the schedule gets tough. That after that Duke game, you get UNC on the road, Notre Dame at home, at Virginia Tech. I think that's a tough game. Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, those teams have played very well. Then you get a bye, and then it's Miami, a bye, and then NC State, and then of course you finish with Georgia. It's just a big recipe for disaster for Georgia Tech this year. They did show some promise last year winning a bowl game, but I think they take a big step back here. Boston College also finishes 3-9. I have them being DeQuains, I think that's how you say it, Western Kentucky, and then not any ACC game until the end of the year, until they play Pitt. And I think Boston College, losing their head coach to be the Packers defensive coordinator, I think there's going to be some shakeup there, lost some guys, and, I just think Boston College, isn't the top team in the ACC already, so they can't just flip the script and still be really good. So I think they're going to take a step back as well and finish an underwhelming 3-9. Cal will also finish 3-9, and it's going to be underwhelming because, they're joining the ACC from the Pac-12. Hopefully, this team could make a little noise. I don't think it's going to happen. They aren't going to win. Well, technically, they'll win one ACC game, and it'll be against Stanford, the team that's joining as well. But Cal, tough schedule, tough out-of-conference schedule besides their one game against an FCS school, California I don't remember what the school is, but they'll beat them week 1. Then you go on the road at Auburn. San Diego State at home is a tough game. And then you start ACC play with FSU, Miami, at Pitt, NC State. And then that's where you pause and play Oregon State, the other out-of-conference game. And I think that's going to be a win for them. And then it's bye week, Wake Forest, Syracuse, win at Stanford, and lose at SMU on the road to finish the season. So Cal, they got a tough season ahead for them. Kind of the same thing, 4-8. I know this team could go either way. You can probably put them as a 6-6 or 4-8. They're going to have wins against Kent State, Youngstown State. They're 2 out-of-conference wins, 2 out of 4, as their other out-of-conference games are West Virginia and Cincinnati. So those are some tough games. And they're going to get ACC wins against Cal and Virginia. So 2 teams we've already seen with worse records, and Pitt's going to beat those teams just because they are slightly better. Wake Forest also joins the 4-8 club, and kind of same thing. They're going to have 2 out-of-conference wins against North Carolina A&T and UConn. But then their ACC wins are going to be against Virginia and Cal, both at home. Kind of the same pattern here as we see for Pitt. Stanford in that same boat as well. Stanford, they're going to beat Cal Poly and San Jose State at the end of the year to get their 2 out-of-conference wins. And they're going to beat Virginia Tech and Wake Forest. So there's a team you haven't seen their record yet. But I think Wake Forest is a team, Stanford's a team, Pitt's a team. All these teams could possibly go 6-6 just because, who knows what's going to happen here with these bottom, what is this, 7 teams, but bottom 7 here. I think these all one could be 6-6, one could be 2-10. Who knows? I think just with this many teams that are kind of the bottom feeders in the ACC, anything could be up in the air. Speaking of those 6-6 teams, I have Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is going to get 3 out-of-conference wins to start off the gate, and I think it's going to be great for them going on the road and beating Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt, who is an SEC team, but they're not the best. Beat Marshall at home. They've been tough the last few years for out-of-conference games. and then they're going to get Old Dominion on the road and beat them. So starting 3-0, and then they're going to lose their fourth out of conference game to Rutgers. But then this is where it starts at Miami, at Stanford, get 2 wins against Boston College and Georgia Tech. So you're going to be 5-3 going into week 10, and I think that's where it kind of the wheels start to fall off. At Syracuse, home against Clemson, and then at Duke. Tough 3 game stretch there, but they are going to rebound with Virginia at home to finish 6-6 to get to a bowl game. Next is Duke at 7-5. Duke, man, where do I start? I think this team could be really good, or they could be really bad. Malik Murphy is taking over at quarterback, the transfer, and I like him a lot. I just think this team, is going to fizzle out towards the end of the year just because of their schedule. They're going to start out with 5 straight wins, beating Elon, Northwestern, UConn, Middle Tennessee State, and UNC. They're going to start 5-0. I think there's going to be some hope there. And then they're going to have an ugly loss at Georgia Tech. And yeah, I told you Georgia Tech's going to finish 3-9. That loss is going to spiral them down for the rest of the year. They go into the bye week though, 5-1, and then they get FSU, SMU, Miami, NC State, probably the top 4 out of 5 teams in this conference, and they're going to lose to all those. And well, frankly, I just don't know. I just don't know how, but they're going to rebound against Virginia Tech and Wake Forest because those teams are at the bottom of the barrel. But you never know. Duke could get that win against Georgia Tech and get an upset win, finish 9-3. Who knows? I just think the ACC for me is the biggest conference that's in the air. 8-4, I have Louisville. I think Louisville could be a sleeper team that not too many people are talking about, just because this team retains a lot, and I think the ACC has been favorable to them. They've been competitive, but could this be the year they really push through? We saw last year them get to the championship game, but then just not have anybody to play. Same with Florida State at that point in the ACC championship game. They just didn't have anyone to get there. But I think this year could be a different story. They're going to start 3-0, then lose on the road to Notre Dame, which will be a great game, then lose at home to Miami. And at this point in week 8, they will have 2 losses, but have 5 wins. And then they're going to get their 6th win against Boston College. And that third loss is going to come at Clemson. And that fourth loss is going to come in the last week of the season at Kentucky. So if you really look at it here, I only have them having 1 home loss, and that's against Miami. Those other 3 losses are just tough road games to play with Notre Dame, Clemson, and Kentucky. 8-4 as well are going to be the North Carolina Tar Heels. North Carolina, they're going to start week 1 with a loss. And it's going to be to Minnesota. I think Minnesota going in there week 1 is going to be a tough place to play because it's early in the season where, the anticipation's there, hopes are there. Everybody has a chance to win it all. So it's always tough going on the road week 1 for one of these games for these middle end teams. But North Carolina is going to rebound nicely. They're going to get Charlotte, and then they're going to get NC Central, get 2 wins. And I think they're going to suffer a very tough loss to James Madison in week 4. And in week 4, you never know what could happen. It's still early enough in the season, and I think they're going to struggle after that loss. They're going to lose on the road at Duke, but then they're going to start to rebound, beat Pitt, beat Georgia Tech, beat Virginia, then lose at Florida State, and then win out, beat Wake Forest, Boston College, and NC State in the rivalry game. And then at 9-3, we have another team in SMU who's going to start out hot as well, win their 4 out-of-conference games. Nevada, Houston Christian, BYU, and TCU. They're going to start 4-0, like I said, get a great start to the year. But then this is where it gets rough for them. They're going to suffer 3 straight losses. Florida State, at Louisville, and then they're going to lose at Stanford in a very ugly loss. But then they're going to rebound for the rest of the year and win 5 straight at Duke, Pitt, Boston College, at Virginia, and at Cal. So the schedule is there for them to possibly, be a very consistent 9-3 team, just because of what we've seen. And SMU has been good these last few years. And I think they're going to look to build on it. At 9-3 as well, I have Clemson. Clemson, week 1, Georgia, going to be a tough game. So I think it could go either way. Clemson's obviously not going to be favored in this game. It's in Atlanta. So it's a tough environment to go play in. But last time these teams played, it was a good game, just not a lot of offense. And if Clemson can figure out the offense, Cade Klubnik can get the ball moving downfield, this Clemson team maybe could give Georgia a run for their money because it's early in the season, and Georgia really doesn't have it all together early in the season. It could be a good game, but regardless, they're going to lose, and then they're going to get App State, beat them, which don't sleep on App State. They're a pretty good team. Then they're going to go in their bye week. In week 4, they're going to lose against NC State at home. I think NC State is a team that's going to be just like Clemson, right there when it matters. And then they're going to beat Stanford and lose at FSU. And then Clemson's going to win out. They get Wake Forest on the road, Virginia, Louisville get a big win against Louisville, Virginia Tech, Pitt, the Citadel, and South Carolina at the end of the year. At 10-2, I have Syracuse. And yeah, I like the Kyle McCord transfer. I think he's going to be great for that program. Really rejuvenate this squad. Syracuse is going to start 5-0. They're going to get their three out of conference wins, and then beat Georgia Tech and Stanford in that process, lose at NC State, but then they're going to rebound nicely with a Pitt win, Virginia Tech win, Boston College, Cal, UConn, and then lose a big game at the end of the year to Miami, and finish 10-2. And I think that Miami game could really dictate how the ACC championship is played this year. 10-2 as well as NC State. NC State, they got a tough week 2 game. Tennessee, it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a great game, but I have them losing to Tennessee. But other than that, I really don't see this team having a problem in this conference because their toughest game, I know, is at Clemson. That's probably their toughest game. But then other than that, their next toughest game is home against Syracuse, and then at the end of the year on the road at North Carolina. But I think they can take care of North Carolina just because of talent, what I've seen this year. NC State could be in the running, like I said, towards the ACC championship. There could be some heavyweights. And at 10-2, making the ACC championship off the tiebreakers is going to be Florida State. Florida State, their 2 losses are going to be at Miami and at Notre Dame. And with only 1 loss in the conference, that's how Florida State gets in with that loss at Miami. And other than that, that means I'm telling you they're going to beat everybody else on that schedule except Miami and Notre Dame. And then goes for Miami as well. I think Miami has a lot to lose this year, but a lot to gain with Cam Ward. Cam Ward has to be the guy that everyone says he's going to be. I think he will. And this might be the time that the U either has a fluke year and is really good, or where the U starts to turn back the clock and become really good again. And their only loss, it's going to be at Louisville. I think that Louisville game is a tough one. It's week 9, so it's getting kind of cold. It's week 8. Sorry, it's going to be week 8. So it's getting kind of cold. And it's, what's that? October, end of October, early November. It's getting kind of cold there. Miami, we know how they don't play well. At least the Dolphins don't in cold weather. So I think the same is going to be said there. But Cam Ward, obviously coming from Washington State, so he's used to it. But I don't know if that much of that other team is. But regardless, they're going to get to the ACC championship and then face off in a rematch against Florida State. And I think that game could dictate who's going to be one of the top 4 seeds in this year's college football playoff and who's going to be hoping that some other teams lose to get into that playoff. That's going to be it for my ACC predictions. Check back next time for Big 10, SEC, and Big 12 predictions. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.